Hello, my brother. Where are you now?
I am right now in Istanbul. I met my sister for the first time after 6 years last night.
Oh my God, I haven't seen my family for 12 years, and I'm very, very happy for you. Would you please introduce yourself to Iranian audiences who have no idea who you are?
I am a Syrian young man. I grew up in Syria, and at the age of 15, I was taken to prison for participating in a protest asking for freedom and democracy in Syria. Something that I believed it was my right since a kid, but I didn't understand until I was 15, 16. I was put in prison. I was tortured. My fingernails were pulled out, and some part of my body was burned just for being young man asking for freedom and democracy. Today, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I study at Georgetown University, trying to upskill myself. So, in the hope for the future to be able to return to my home country, Syria, and rebuild it.
Omar, tell me, what do you think about the rule of Iranian regime and especially the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, in Syria?
The Iranian regime has supported the Assad regime in Syria and killing its own people. It's obvious, it's documented. Sadly, I can tell you that in May of 2013, while I was in prison being tortured, a massacre happened in my village in Syria. My village is called Al Bayda, a very beautiful town on the Syrian coast, mountains, river, birds, very beautiful and green. The Iranian regime's forces, in addition, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, in addition to the Syrian regime forces, they attacked my village and they killed everyone they met, including my father and two of my brothers. And they burned our house where my mom and the rest of my siblings were inside. And my mom survived with some of my siblings. So my dad and two brothers died. I would never be able to see them again. I know this is a situation for a lot of Iranian people who oppose the dictatorship in Iran. It's so similar. Iran regime, they want to support the dictator that exists in Syria so they can themselves stay in power. So the Syrian people, by winning over the dictatorship, they will inspire the Iranian people to keep fighting, right? So the regime doesn't want that to happen, unfortunately. And Iran has been, or obviously not Iran as people, as Iran as a regime has been leading its soldiers and militias to fight alongside the Syrian regime for so many, give the people some freedom, give some people some democracy to rebuild their country, overcome all the challenges that exist. They prioritize to go to other country and kill other people.
Well, you noted the differences between Iran and the Islamic Republic. Do the Syrian people differentiate between the people of Iran and the government of Iran?
So when I moved out from Syria because of war, I had the idea, and the first introduction I had about Iran is the fact that they killed my father, my brothers. But when I moved to Sweden, I actually met an Iranian friend, which I was a little bit, very worried about that idea in the beginning. But then later, that guy was a lawyer, was a very nice guy. And then I met his brother, who was a doctor, introduced me to the family. I met an amazing Iranian family. And I started to have these fighting thoughts in my head saying, are Iranians good or bad? Then, over time, you meet more people and realize there's so many good Iranian people. Obviously, that's the regime itself. That's exactly what's happening in Syria. The regime, getting some people around them, giving them specific circumstances to kill the others, to have the power to kill the others. The same thing applies in the Iranian case. There's a regime that's using a lot of people to do horrible actions, and the other side, majority of the people are innocent, trying to fight for human rights. So I realized, because my first picture I built in my head was a kid. When I grow up, started to understand the situation, I realized obviously the Iranian people are being oppressed by their regime, and they deserve freedom the same way the Syrian people deserve.
For many people in Iran, Qasem Solemani is not a hero. I want to know your opinion on what do the Syrian people think about Qasem Solemani?
So Qasem Soleimani has been part of a system that allowed the massacres to take place in Syria. Obviously not in Syria, Iran, Yemen, Lebanon. And so when I think about him, I think of a criminal who killed my father and my brothers. When I think about him, I think about him as a person who supported the dictator in Syria to kill its own people. He is a nightmare. He was a nightmare for people. And it's when he died, the Syrian people celebrated, not only for themselves, but only for the Iranian people who deserve freedom to get rid of such horrible person.
Okay, I have another question for you. What do the Syrian people expect from Iranian people?
We expect the Iranian people to learn the truth first about these soldiers that going from Iran. Where are they going to? Are they going to fight for a good reason or a bad reason. It's obviously a bad reason. If you can just like do a basic search, try to get the knowledge and basic ways, you would realize these Iranian soldiers going to Syria, going to commit crimes supporting the Assad regime. So we expect the Iranian people to read, to learn. Like, as we understand that there are Iranian people who are innocent, you know, and not involved in these crimes that the Iranian forces are doing, we expect them also to understand that, you know, there are soldiers are coming to Syria to commit crimes as well. We expect the Iranian people to speak up, because fear does not help themselves, doesn't help us, doesn't help any innocent person. If you fear all the time, fear makes you weak, and weakness lets you to die, unfortunately.
Omar, I know you have a lot of dreams, but tell me what future can be predicted for the two nations, Iran and Syria?
For both, you know, for both Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Iran, I expect a bright future, because you have so much people with so much resistance in them. They survive. They are so good at keeping up the hard work. You know, I've been detained 3 years, tortured on a daily basis, seen my, you know, my father, my brothers killed, my cousins died in my arms. Still, you know, I can smile today. I can prove to the regime that tried to break me physically and mentally that I can exist. And the women in Syria, the women in Iran, they are so resilient, they're so strong. We have a complete society of people who are willing to change the government. We have the will for freedom, right? We need to find new strategies and good allies that can support us in getting this freedom. So I'm hopeful about the future for the entire region, including Syria and Iran.
And last question. I ask my audiences on Twitter if the Iran nuclear deal is in favor of the Iranian government or the Iranian people. What do you think about this?
Well, obviously, any deal with any dictatorship that does not include and condition the human rights and the limitation of human rights, you know, violation that's happening in this country is a wrong deal. It's going to obviously, it's made for the benefit of the government itself, and that's something threatens the freedom that people are seeking. Never be accepted. Such deal should always be taken away if it does not include the human rights.
Thank you so much. My dream is to invite you to my country, Iran. Instead of Khamenei and Bashar Assad hugging us, I want to hug you and the people of Syria.
I'm looking forward to being in Iran with you and you being in Syria with me.